Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm at SMT in Nuremberg, and I have a distinguished panel together with me today to talk about the competitiveness of the European EMS sector. Obviously been through some challenging times through 2008, but I think coming out quite strong at the moment, and we really want to explore why perhaps. Starting with Bob. Bob's from SMS Electronics. Thanks, Bob, for joining us. Ray, many of you know from C-Place, and Frank from Secor.
Right.
Yeah, Frank, thank you very much for joining us. Perhaps if we can start with you. You have a facility in both East and West Europe. Tell me a bit about the different demands that those factories give you in terms of the ability to compete.
Okay, so from the ability to compete, you have to see that Switzerland is a high-paid country, actually, but on the other side you have very good engineers, and you have to match these. You have to build programs where you can sell the knowledge of the engineers. You have to sell the good processes. You can involve in some kind, or you can be involved in some kind of processes of the different type of customers. So that means we do not sell only electronics, or we do not sell only EMS. So we go to the customer and say, we are giving you a solution. You maybe have a logistics solution somewhere. If you need plastics, if you need sheet metal, if you need a housing, if you need engineering services. So normally we deliver him from Switzerland. Right. On the other hand, for the European community, we have installed in Romania, in Arad, which is 30 kilometers near to Hungary, a facility which is now the biggest one we have. And so we deliver with energy, or I have to say, everything you have to handle with hand will be made primarily in
So where
Arad.
it's labor intensive.
Right,
yeah.
It is. And so the costs come down, and so we are competitive against others, and we can deliver in just in time or any other logistic models.
So proximity to the customer is really important.
Right.
Yeah. And Bob, your company just seems to be going from strength to strength over the last few years. The time we've been talking, you seem to be growing, and in the UK, and that's kind of slightly counterintuitive, but it seems to be working.
It bucks the trend, because everyone thinks that the major foothold of manufacturing, contract manufacturing, is outside of the UK. But in actual fact, I think the principles of a good subcontractor remain the same across all levels, and that is, you've got to be responsive, you've got to be flexible, you've got to know what you can offer, and then make sure that you fulfill that offering to the customer. SMS have invested throughout the whole of their history in the state-of-the-art equipment. I mean, I've got Ray sat next to me here, and we've bought Siemens equipment throughout our history. And if you've got the right equipment, and you've got the right approach, and you've got good suppliers, because we mustn't forget that we're actually sat in the middle. You know, we have a customer who comes to us for a product, and then we've got to step outside of his arena to buy components, to buy boards, to have support equipment, and you've got to make sure that that relationship is as strong as possible. If you can put all of those things together, and then make sure that your offering to the customer is timely and is price conscious, because that's the way the market is, then you'll have a very solid, strong customer base and grow your business. And we seem to be very successful at that.
Very well at that. And Ray, from your point of view, you spend a lot of time with these guys, but a whole bunch of contract manufacturers throughout Europe. One of the key words that I got from Bob's comments was investment. We see the Germans seem to have invested through the downturn and are doing well out of it. Bob's company's done the same. Is that really, do you think, a key to success in Europe?
Well, actually there are hundreds and hundreds of EMS companies in Europe. And what I noticed both guys said, it's service. That's what they're providing. And whether it's assembly, I mean, I'm a placement equipment supplier, I tend to think about the placement line. But in reality, they're offering services in logistics, in packaging, even in design and whatever. So they service their market. And sometimes they're servicing a local market, very specific around the factory, or sometimes they're serving a European market. So each one is slightly different, in some cases quite different even within the same company. They have a factory here specializing in something, and a factory there doing something totally different. Totally different. So success is investment, because if you don't invest, your costs will keep going up year on year, and then you become non-competitive.
Yeah. And I think that's what's happened in some regions, some of the countries in Europe that aren't doing so well in the current kind of onshoring trend or some of the return to business is because they haven't invested in the last few years and the factories are out of date. The factories here seem to be quite lean and quite aggressive. Is that the case with Circle?
Yeah, I think so. So I would say you have to invest in machinery, you have to invest in good equipment, and you have to be a part of state of the art. Otherwise, you are not the basic. So that is what we hear from the customers. So equipment is basic. And if you do not have the good new equipment, you can't serve the needs of the customers. That means I do have to invest in the equipment, I do have to invest, of course, then in the people and the education of the people to, of course, to control the machineries, to control the equipment on the other hand. And the next is to think about what is the customer in which kind of region really needs. So is this more service there? Is this a little bit more logistics there?
Yeah.
Maybe some customer needs more in-house logistic, field repair. And there's a lot of variety of services you can deliver.
Yeah, and Bob, it's a lot more than just PCBA. It's a lot more than just assembly these days. Is the requirement to be either side of PCBA, to be involved in design, to be involved in delivery logistics, packaging important?
I mean, absolutely. I think the fact that you can offer a service, a full suite of services from prototype through test and understand what elements the customer wants, but what we're finding quite a growth market for us is repairing of product, and then at the end of the life of the product, making sure that it's safely disposed of. You know, we have a number of customers that will come along and say, you're manufacturing this for us, who's going to get rid of it for me at the end of the day? Who's going to make sure that this doesn't go into a landfill site and cause pollution and cause other environmental issues? So we've really taken that to heart and dedicated one section of the facility in order to be able to do that. And customers are coming to us and saying, right, this probably is now a cradle to grave service. So we all hear that statement used very often, but it is required. It absolutely is a requirement from the customer base.
I've actually heard the phrase cradle to cradle and talking about, you know, what can be recycled at the end and what can come back in. And I think that's indicative, but it's important that you're adding to the whole line of the services.
Going back several years, we used to call it subcontract assembly, and now it's EMS. And really the emphasis is on service.
It is.
Assembly is, as I say, part of the service provided.
But actually it's the way words change in their use, Ray, I think is really important. We look at your business we used to think of as an equipment supplier. Now you have assembly systems in your name, and you're much more about selling systems, solutions, a full package, processes, which keeps these guys competitive.
It was a mechanical machine in the old days, and it's not quite like that today. And what really came out is not just investment in equipment, but in processes and in people, because the successful companies actually do a lot with their people. Otherwise, you soon become non-competitive in that.
Last question from you guys' point of view. It's obviously really important that you pick the right suppliers, you pick the right supply chain. But how important is it that you pick the right customers and the right projects? Are there vertical markets that you know you should be playing in, vertical markets you know you shouldn't be in as a European contract manufacturer? Can I start with you on that, Frank?
Yeah, of course.
So Bob's thinking about that one.
Oh, really? So of course, we're thinking about the customer in the very early stage. So maybe 1 year before we want to start in a discussion with that kind of customer, we think, is this kind of customer one who fits to our business we can serve? On the other hand, maybe is the profit we can reach with them or to make with him, is that what we want to do? And on the other hand, fits that in the entire strategy of the company. So, and that gives you a good way to capture this customer. I would like to or I'm like these kind of word there, and that means we are really prepared to win some customer, and then we are really focused on his needs and what he's doing. Some others going like hundreds of customers and try to serve anyone, but it couldn't be successful on my mind.
Okay, and from your point of view, Bob, selecting the right customer.
I agree with what Frank's just said. As a service provider, you can't be all things to all men. And if you try and set up your business to satisfy every single market at every single level, you're doomed for failure. Not just doomed as a supplier of those services, but also you're doomed with that particular customer. you have to have a recognition for what is the best fit, who is the best customer that fits the way that you produce the product, the way that you want to service his market. And then once you have that understanding in place, then the customer knows what his expectations are, and you know whether you're going to be able to realize them or not. And that equates to profitable business on both sides, because that's why we're sat here, to gain profitable business.
Absolutely. So select the customer in a targeted way, service the hell out of them, and maintain those customers, low customer turnover. Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, thanks very much for talking to me. Really interesting discussion, and a very, I think, positive outlook for European contract manufacturing. Thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.